This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Yeah. Okay, my Rabbi Glatstein, good morning, everyone. This morning you have to hold cup. So if you're tired and you're weary, too bad. Okay? Get yourself together. Yeah? Sit up straight. Make believe that this is something important, because it is. Okay, you got to focus. You got to hold cup for today's shiur. We're going to speak about a sugya in Shas, a Lomdus sugya. We'll see if we'll do it in one or two sections. The Gemara in Masechta Sukkah talks about the pasuk Chag HaSukkos Tasa Lecha Shivas Yamim. Comes Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel says, what do I do with the pasuk Chag HaSukkos Tasa Lecha Lema'ute Gezula, to exclude a stolen sukkah, that you can't sit in a stolen sukkah on Sukkos. That's what I do with the pasuk Chag HaSukkos Tasa Lecha, that you cannot sit in a stolen sukkah.
You can sit in it, but you're not l'chayim.
Yeah, and therefore you can't sit in it. You're not allowed to. Now comes Tosfos, and Tosfos asks the following question. This is Tosfos in Masechta Sukkah on Daf Tes. Tosfos asks, why do I need a pasuk that says that you can't sit in a stolen sukkah? Of course you can sit in a stolen sukkah. It is what is called a mitzvah Habah ba'avera, because, right, a mitzvah that comes through an avera. Now, stealing is an avera. So, it's not just a skula not to steal. Halavai, it should just be a skula. If it was a skula not to steal, then maybe people would take it seriously. But stealing is a isser, and since it's an isser, it's a mitzvah Habah ba'avera. And how could you be yotzei the mitzvah of Sukkos? It's a mitzvah ba'avera. So why do I need the pasuk Chag HaSukkos Tasa Lecha? The pasuk is extra, it's extraneous, it's superfluous, it is not needed. We know a stolen esrog on the second day of Yom Tif is pasul. The Gemara says on Chavtes Amud Beis, because of mitzvah Habah ba'avera. Because the Gemara says, Bishlama, Yom Tov Rishon, of course you can't be yotzei with a stolen esrog. But, right, because it says, well, kachtem lachem, you have to own it. But what about on the second day? The Gemara says on the second day you're not yotzei with a sukkah gezula because it's mitzvah Habah ba'avera. So the question then is, why do I need a pasuk of Chag HaSukkos Tasa Lecha teipikle because of mitzvah Habah ba'avera? Okay, Rabbi Glatstein, get the question? And for Tosfos answers that mitzvah Habah ba'avera is not d'oraisa, it's only midrabanan. Mitzvah Habah ba'avera is only a psul midrabanan, and therefore I need a pasuk to say it's even pasul midoraisa. That is the answer of Tosfos. By the way, the Ritva, just to point out, so you should be aware, it gives a different teretz. The Ritva brings, in the name of the Yerushalmi, that mitzvah Habah ba'avera does not apply by the mitzvah of sukkah. Why not? Says the Ritva, and the Ritva quotes Tosfos. It's not our Tosfos, but it's a Tosfos. Says the Ritva that mitzvah Habah ba'avera only applies by a mitzvah that you're coming to appease Hashem. In other words, there are different types of mitzvahs. Some mitzvahs, it's just a dry act, like put on tefillin, put on a talis, learn Torah, or you're just performing the mitzvah and then you get credit for it. So then mitzvah Habah ba'avera is not a problem. When is mitzvah Habah ba'avera a problem? When the mitzvah has a specific goal. What's the goal of the mitzvah? To try to appease Hashem, to try to persuade Hashem and get on Hashem's good side. What mitzvahs are you trying to appease Hashem and get on Hashem's good side? For example, a carbon oila. Why would a person bring a carbon oila? Let's say a person missed a mitzvah d'oraisa. A person was mavatel a mitzvah d'oraisa. So you do tshuva, so you get off the hook for the mitzvah. But it's still, Hashem is not happy with you. So how are you meratzeh Hashem? How do you get back on Hashem's good side? You bring a carbon oila. If that oila is a stolen oila, then the oila cannot accomplish its intended goal. That's a mitzvah Habah ba'avera. But if it's not something like a carbon oila, or another example, says the Ritva, in the name of Taisus. Lulav and esrog. Lulav and esrog, why do we shake a lulav and esrog? Not just to perform the mitzvah d'oraisa, but the Gemara says that what's unique about a lulav and esrog is that a lulav and esrog and hadassim and aravos, they grow on rainwater. They cannot subside on irrigated water. They need rainwater. So what you do is you're serving Hashem with items that need the rain as a way of trying to appease Hashem to make it rain. So that means the purpose of the mitzvah of the Daled Minim is not just to perform the mitzvah, but you're trying to elicit a certain response from Hashem. So whenever a mitzvah is coming to be meratzeh, then you'll never be meratzeh Hashem. You will not be able to appease Hashem if it's a stolen item. But if you're just performing a mitzvah, like sukkah, like tefillin, then there's no psul of mitzvah habah ba'avera, and therefore you need the pasuk of Chag HaSukkos Taseh L'cha. This is the answer that the Ritva gives in the name of Tosfos. Lamaisa, the Ritva rejects it, based on the Yushalmi, that the Yushalmi says that you're not mekayim the mitzvah of matzah with stolen matzah. Matzah is not coming to be meratzah Hashem. So you see from the Yushalmi that mitzvah haba ba'avera applies to all mitzvahs. And in fact, the Yushalmi learns it out from a pasuk of Eila ha-mitzvahs, that you better do a mitzvah the correct way, and if you don't, it's not a mitzvah. Be it as it may, the Ritva says, you see from the Yushalmi, that mitzvah haba ba'avera applies to all mitzvahs in the Torah. Let's come back to the ranch, let's just make things clear. Let's chazer over Tosfos' kasha. Tosfos' kasha is, why do I need a pasuk that a stolen sukkah is not good? Of course a stolen sukkah is not good. Mitzvah haba ba'avera. What answer does Tosfos give? Mitzvah haba ba'avera is only a psul d'Rabbanan, and I need the pasuk to say it's pasul midaraisa. Lemaisa, if you look in Tosfos says not true. Tosfos says, he quotes Rabbeinu Tam, and Rabbeinu Tam says, mitzvah haba ba'avera is a psul d'oraisa. Well, if according to Rabbeinu Tam, we're up the creek without a paddle. Why? Because if mitzvah haba ba'avera is a psul d'oraisa, why do I need a pasuk of Chag HaSukkos Taseh L'cha? No, the Gemara says it comes to teach me that a sukkah gzula is pasul. So you can't argue on the Gemara. So why do I need a pasuk Chag HaSukkah that a sukkah gzula is pasul? Tepikle misham mitzvah haba ba'avera. And don't say mitzvah haba ba'avera is only a psul d'Rabbanan, because Rabbeinu Tam says it's a psul d'oraisa. Now, interestingly, if you look in Tosfos on Daf Lamed, Tosfos on Daf Lamed also seems to hold that mitzvah haba ba'avera is a psul d'oraisa. Why? Because Tosfos says, if you have a lulav of an Asherah tree or of an Ir Hanidachas, what's a lulav of an Asherah tree? You have a lulav that of a tree that people worshipped as avodah zarah, or if you have a lulav that grew in an Ir Hanidachas, both of these lulavim need to be destroyed. Could you be yotzei the mitzvah with these lulavim? So Gemara says no. Why? Mishum de miktas shiurei. The shiur has been diminished. Meaning, since you need to destroy it and burn it and obliterate it, it's as if you've already done that and it doesn't have the correct shiur. Frag Tosfos, why do I need a pasuk? Of course you can't use these an Asherah tree. It's mitzvah haba ba'avera. What do you mean mitzvah haba ba'avera? But mitzvah haba ba'avera is only d'Rabbanan. Must be Tosfos holds like Rabbeinu Tam that mitzvah haba ba'avera is a psul d'oraisa. Okay.
What's the avera? Because it's asur b'hana.
Yeah. What's the avera?
It's chefza de'esura.
Yeah. So now we're back to Tosfos' kasha. Tosfos' question is, why do I need a pasuk Chag HaSukkos Taseh L'cha to tell me that a sukkah gzula is psula of course the Sukkah Gzula is possible because of Mitzvah Habah B'Avera. And don't say that Mitzvah Habah B'Avera is only D'Rabbanan, because many Rishonim, namely Rabbeinu Tam, namely Tosfos and Sukkah and Daf Lamed, and this is the Marsha points out, holds Mitzvah Habah B'Avera is a psul d'oraisa. Comes the Minchas Chinuch, and the Minchas Chinuch gives a rather revolutionary answer, a famous answer, and it's a good thing that you came today to hear the answer of the Minchas Chinuch. Okay, everyone with me? You're going to say over the answer of Minchas Chinuch. Comes the Minchas Chinuch, and he says over a very interesting thing. Says the Minchas Chinuch, there are two types of mitzvahs. Mitzvah number one is Akar Kafta de Gavra. Here you have a guy, it's Friday morning, November 10th. November 10th, 2017. And the guy wakes up in the morning, he says, I'm so tired. I couldn't sleep the whole night. I was smelling the cholent, it was keeping me up. I was so excited to early Friday night. I couldn't sleep the whole night. And the guy doesn't sleep the whole night. He says, you know what? He wakes up in the morning. I'm so tired. I'm not wearing tefillin today. Chas v'shalom. So let's say a guy doesn't put on tefillin one day. What is he? He certainly did not fulfill the Ratzon of Hashem. But did he do an Avera? The answer is, obviously, he did an outright Avera. Why? Because it's not discretionary to put on tefillin. You're obligated to wear tefillin. You were mevatel the will of Hashem. God's will is you put on tefillin, and you went against it. You went against Hashem. Now, albeit you went against Hashem passively, you didn't act against Hashem, but your passive behavior was a flagrant violation of the will of Hashem. You are mevatel. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the Avera. The Avera is not doing it. The Avera is not doing it, so you are mevatel the Ratzon of Hashem. You went against the Ratzon of Hashem, and therefore you will be punished. Fine. That is, or let's say lulav and esrog. Let's say I'm not going to. I choose not to take lulav and esrog. What are you? You're an avaryan. You went against the Ratzon of Hashem. You did it passively, but you went against the Ratzon of Hashem. But what, for example, is a guy says, you know what? I'm not in the mood to wear a four-cornered garment today. What is he? He's nothing. He chose not to be Mekayim a mitzvah. You're not obligated to put on a four-cornered garment. You're only obligated that if you're wearing a four-cornered garment, you better put strings on it. But if you choose not to wear a four-cornered garment, you're not going against the will of Hashem. Now, that's not really true. Rav Moshe has a tshuva that since the minhag in Klal Yisrael is to go out of one's way to wear a four-cornered garment, that's a minhag Yisrael. It's like a neder, and you have to do it. But let's say going back 1,000 years ago, if somebody would not put on a four-cornered garment one morning, what would they be? They'd be what you call an average Joe. Sorry, an average Yankel, an average Feivel. We'll have to pick a name that nobody's name. An average Peter. You're an average guy because, look, certainly it would be very nice for you to put yourself in a situation to be Mekayim a mitzvah, and that is certainly the Derech HaToiv and the Derech HaYashar, but if you don't, you're not a bad guy. Marav Rabbi says, so what do we see from here? There are two kinds of mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs chiyuvis, and there are mitzvahs that are not chiyuvis. Mitzvah chiyuvis, everyone's obligated to be Mekayim. A mitzvah that's not chiyuvis is somewhat discretionary. Continues the Minchas Chinuch. What about if a person says, you know what? I don't want to sit in the sukkah. Now like this.
Except for the first night.
If you're going to eat out of the sukkah, you're a flagrant violator. If you're going to eat out of the sukkah, you're a flagrant violator. What if a guy says, you know what, but I'm not going to eat. I don't want to eat. I'm going to eat jelly beans for the whole sukkah, and therefore I'm not obligated to go into the sukkah. Red jelly beans, yellow jelly beans, purple jelly. I always wanted to be like Ronald Reagan. And I'm going to eat jelly beans for 8 days straight. What is he?
An average Joe.
Diabetic.
What is he?
Pre-diabetic.
Yeah, what is he?
What about the first night is different, no?
You tell me.
The first
Well,
night is like matzah.
After the first night, there's no obligation to eat in the sukkah. You could just not eat. If you eat, you better do it in the sukkah. But I could choose not to eat. So if I eat jelly beans for the last 7 days of sukkahs, so then I am not an avaryan. I'm just choosing not to go out of my way to be mekayim a mitzvah of yeshiva b'sukkah. But what about on the first night? On the first night, it's not discretionary. It's not up to you whether you're hungry or not. Even if you're not hungry, we learn now tesvav, ba'erev techlu matzah. It's the same way you're mechuyev to eat matzah the first night of Pesach. You're mechuyev to eat bread and eat it in the sukkah on the first night of Sukkot.
What about the first day?
No, you're not. First day is nothing. First day is nothing. Nah. So I'm not mekayim the mitzvah of the Suda, but I'm not blowing the mitzvah of Sukkah. So what do we see from here? There are two elements of the mitzvah of Sukkah. There's a mitzvah chiyuvis, which is the first night, and there's a mitzvah she'ena chiyuvis after the first night. Let's deal with the following issue. What if this guy so tzitzis. Tzitzis is kiyumis. I don't have to wear tzitzis. I could choose not to wear a beged of dalet kanfos. However, I have to wear tefillin. But what if I put on dalet kanfos and I don't put strings on it? What's that? Now I'm an avaryan. Because I put myself in the situation and now I'm not being mekayim the mitzvah. Sometimes you could do a mitzvah and be mekayim the ratzon of Hashem. Sometimes I cannot be mekayim a mitzvah and I'm not violating the ratzon of Hashem. And sometimes I am. Well, says the Minchas Chinuch, here's an amazing thing. Let's say this guy who stole a sukkah. He stole someone's sukkah. And it's the second day of Yom Tif, the third day of Yom Tif, the fourth day of Yom Tif, the fifth day of Yom Tif. And he's sitting in a stolen sukkah. Is he an avaryan? He's eating in a stolen sukkah. He's eating in a stolen sukkah. Is he an avaryan or is he not an avaryan?
I would say he's an avaryan because if he's eating there, then if he's eating because
so
he's
time out.
to eat there, and then he's eating in the sukkah that he can't be mekayim the mitzvah, he should be an avaryan.
Says in Minchas Chinuch, if it's the first night of Sukkot and he eats in a stolen sukkah, what is he? He's for sure an avaryan. Why? Because on the first night of Sukkot, it's not only that if you're eating, you better do it in a sukkah. You must go out of your way to eat in the sukkah. So the first night of Sukkot, if you're eating in a stolen sukkah, not only do you not get the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah, you're an avaryan. Why? Why are you an avaryan? Because I have to eat in a sukkah, and I'm not getting credit for the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah because I stole the sukkah. But after the first night, listen carefully, after the first night, on the second night, the third night, the fourth night, the fifth night, the sixth night, the seventh night, if I'm eating in a stolen sukkah, what am I? So the answer is that if it would just be mitzvah habah ba'avera, so you know what mitzvah habah ba'avera says? That I am not going to get credit for the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah if it's a stolen sukkah. Fine. So I won't get credit for it. So what am I now? I'm an average Joe. Why am I an average Joe?
If the owner is Messiah,
No, he's not miyash. It's a stolen sukkah. And you're not kind of just with gazela and yesh. You need Chinuch. Okay. But if a guy sits in a stolen sukkah on day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, what is he? He's not an avarian. But what do you mean? He's eating. Okay, you're right, I'm eating. But you're not Mekayim the mitzvah of sukkah. So, I don't have to be Mekayim the mitzvah of sukkah.
But you aren't eating in a makom that's usher to you?
No, mitzvah habah ba'avera. 1 second.
It's usher to you.
What do you mean it's usher me? But
You're not allowed to eat
you're
there.
right, I'm not allowed to eat there. I'm not allowed to eat there. But I'm not an avarian.
So if it's usher to you, why aren't you an avarian?
No, because what do you want me to do? What am I doing wrong?
Eat there. It's, go find some place that isn't stolen.
Why?
There's options to do
I'm
that.
not mechuyev
If
to
you
eat.
went, But if you did it, it's...
I'm not chayiv to eat in a sukkah on day 2.
But you're eating in a makom that's usher to you.
So all that does is, I'm not Mekayim the mitzvah. I don't have to be Mekayim the mitzvah. I'm not obligated to be Mekayim the mitzvah. What?
You're sticking it into a Kaddish Baruch Hu's
Why?
face.
Because I'm eating and I'm not going into a sukkah?
No, you're eating
No.
a place that you're not allowed to
Mitzvah
eat.
habah ba'avera doesn't say it's not a sukkah. It's still a sukkah. It's
Not
just...
for you. It's a,
No,
it's a,
no.
It's a different place.
No, all mitzvah habah ba'avera says is that I don't get credit for the mitzvah. Fine, so I don't get credit for the mitzvah. I don't have to get credit for the mitzvah on day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All I have to do is that I'm not allowed to eat out of a sukkah. I'm not eating out of a sukkah. I'm eating in a sukkah. Elamai, I have to be Mekayim the mitzvah. I don't have to be Mekayim the mitzvah on day 2 through 8. So, meaning mitzvah habah ba'avera doesn't say it's not a sukkah. It's still a sukkah. It's just I don't get credit for it. Therefore, says the Minchas Chinuch, I need the pasuk because a pasuk comes along and says that Chag HaSukkah is Taselcha. It's not a sukkah. Oh, if it's not a sukkah, now I'm eating and it's not in a sukkah. Had it just been mitzvah habah ba'avera, then I would be eating in a sukkah. But I have to get credit for it? I don't have to get credit. There's no obligation to get credit for the mitzvah after day 1. On day 1, I don't need a pasuk. Because on day 1, I have to get credit for the mitzvah. And mitzvah habah ba'avera says I'm not mekayim the mitzvah. If I'm not mekayim the mitzvah, I'm an avarian on day 1. So I don't need a pasuk for day 1. But on day 2 through 8, then all I need to do is be in a sukkah. So just because it's stolen doesn't mean it's not a sukkah. Stolen just makes it I don't get credit. I'm not obligated to get credit after day 1.
Doesn't lose the same shame sukkah?
No. It's still a chefza of the sukkah. It's just the gavra is not mekayim the mitzvah. So the gavra is not mekayim the mitzvah. I don't have to. Gavra doesn't have to be mekayim a mitzvah after day 2.
Does that apply just for the person who stole the sukkah? But if somebody else comes in there and doesn't know that it's stolen, are they mekayim the mitzvah?
Avada they're mekayim the mitzvah.
So then it doesn't lose the shame sukkah.
That's what I'm saying.
If you know, Roman stole a sukkah, can you go eating that? And have it?
According to what we're saying, yeah. The other guy could go in it. Because it's a kosher sukkah. It's just the guy who stole it can't get credit for the mitzvah because he stole it. Also.
Only for the guy that...
In other words, we're basically clearing a chakira. Mitzvah habah ba'avera, does it make it that it's not a sukkah? Or does it just make it that you can't get credit for the mitzvah?
But your family could eat that.
The family could eat there. So where the Minchas Chiddush is, mitzvah habah ba'avera is just that since Hashem is not happy with what you did, you can't get credit for the mitzvah. But still a kosher sukkah. To the point where, on day 2, I'm not an avarian. But I'm eating out of a sukkah. No, you're eating in a kosher sukkah. I'm eating in a kosher sukkah. I'm not an avarian. I'm eating in a kosher sukkah. I just can't get credit for it. So on day 1, I'm obligated to get credit for the mitzvah. After day 1, I'm not obligated to get credit for the mitzvah.
But still, I mean, for the person that did the gzela,
Yeah.
for him it's really not a kosher sukkah. It's not a kosher sukkah for him. Because if it's
No.
a kosher sukkah,
No.
he should be able to get credit.
No, it is a kosher sukkah.
It's hard to understand if the kosher sukkah that he doesn't get credit.
No, that's the rule of mitzvah habah ba'avera. Mitzvah habah ba'avera says, if your performance of a mitzvah, came through the act of a sin, Hashem cannot accrue, you can't get credit for the mitzvah. But it doesn't say it's not a kosher sukkah. What's possible about the sukkah?
The sukkah's kosher, the guy's not.
Right, the guy's not kosher.
Would the same thing apply for Esrog and Lulav?
What about it?
After the
First night, you don't get credit.
For the last 7 days, anybody else who use it gets credit for it?
Yeah. That's according to Minchas Chinuch. Now, still, you could ask, how could he say that the other days of Sukkot you're allowed to eat in a Sukkah Psula? Question. Let's say I eat out of a Sukkah on Sukkot. Let's say I eat a salami sandwich on day 2, out of the Sukkah. Am I violating B'kum B'aseh, or am I violating B'shav Al Taseh? In other words, a guy who doesn't wear tefillin is violating B'shav Al Taseh. Is a guy who eats out of a sukkah, does he have a chiyuv to actively go into the sukkah? Or is it just that you're not allowed to eat out of the sukkah?
Well, if he's eating a meal, he has a chiyuv to go into the sukkah, right? He's eating a meal that there's a chiyuv to eat in the sukkah. Well, the chiyuv...
Is it I have to go in the sukkah, or is it utzer for me to eat out of the sukkah?
You have to go in. Otherwise, you wouldn't make a bracha. They say the sukkah.
Is it a positive asay, or is it an isser mitoich? Well, if I have a chiyuv to go into a sukkah,
if you're going to eat a meal that's a chayiv to eat in the sukkah, there's a chiyuv.
So does this fit into the Minchas Chinuch? Because I'm not doing that now. If I have a chiyuv to go into the sukkah, I'm not fulfilling that chiyuv. I'm obligated to go into a sukkah, and I'm not doing that because this sukkah is not going to work for me. Some want to say the Minchas Chinuch obviously holds it's just usher to eat out of the sukkah. Okay, but I don't want to get into that now. I want to isolate what just the straightforward explanation of Minchas Chinuch. Minchas Chinuch is coming to answer Tosfos' kasha. Tosfos' kasha is, why do I need a pasuk that Chag HaSukkos Taselcha Sukkah Gezula is Psula? Typically, it's Mitzvah Habah B'Avera. The answer of the Minchas Chinuch is very clear. That in a chanami for day 1, I don't need a pasuk. Why? Because merely the fact that I don't get credit for the mitzvah would render me an avaryan. Because I have to get credit for the mitzvah on the first night. But subsequent to the first night, where I'm not obligated to get credit, then had it just been for mitzvah habah b'avera, then I wouldn't be an avaryan. I would just not be being mekayim a mitzvah. Comes Chag HaSukkos Taselcha. You know what Chag HaSukkos Taselcha says? The sukkah is puzzle. The sukkah is puzzle. I'm not eating in the sukkah. I'm eating out of a sukkah. Had it just been for mitzvah habah b'avera, I'd be eating in a sukkah. I just can't get credit for it. Comes mitzvah habah b'avera, and mitzvah habah b'avera says the sukkah is puzzle. Okay? Fine. Rav Shimon Shkop in the Shari Yosher does not like the Minchas Chinuch. First of all, he feels that you have a positive chiyuv to go into the sukkah. But besides that, says Reb Shimon, mitzvah habah b'avera is not just that the guy does not get credit for the mitzvah. Mitzvah habah b'avera is the item is pasul. It's a disqualified item, and therefore you're an avaryan even after the first day. Why? Reb Shimon Shkop brings the following raya. The Gemara in Sukkah on Daf Lamed says that why is a lulav hagazel pasul? Says Reb Shemar Yechai, it's pasul because it's a mitzvah habah b'avera. The pasuk says in Malachi, by carbon oila, v'havesem gazel, piseach, and choyla. Don't bring a carbon oila that's stolen, cripple, or sick. Says the Gemara, gazel dumya de piseach. Stolen is like a cripple. Just like a cripple, there's no takana. Can't bring an animal that's a cripple. So to stolen, there's no takana. Why? Because mitzvah habah ba'avera. So listen carefully. The Gemara on Daf Lamed Masechta Sukkah learns out, why is a stolen esrog no good? Stealing is like cripple. Just like cripple is not good, stolen is not good. Says Reb Shimon Shkop, when you bring a carbon oil which is crippled, is it just you don't get credit for it? No, it's an inherent disqualification with the animal. The animal is inherently disqualified as a carbon oila. So too, if it's stolen, it's not just you don't get credit for it. It's inherently flawed. From here, says Rabbi Shimon, is a raya that mitzvah habah ba'aver is a psul ba'etzam.
Just for the person who stole it.
No, and then it would be for everyone. Yeah, now if it's pasul ba'etzam.
What if the rightful owner of the sukkah comes in and sits down in that sukkah? He's not going to be, it's pasul. It's not pasul.
No. No, because the guy can't answer something. You can't answer my thing on me. You could answer it on someone else.
But you're saying that
yeah, the sukkah is a crippled sukkah.
I was saying before, the
It's a it's not a sukkah. It's not a sukkah.
Right.
for one person it's not a sukkah, for another person it is.
Yeah. And therefore, Rabbi Isai, the Minchas, says Reb Shimon, in his opinion, the Minchas Chinuch is not correct. Because Minchas Chinuch wants to say, the reason why I need a pasuk for Sukkah Gezula is because otherwise on day 2 I would not be an Avaryan, because it only disqualifies the fulfillment, but it's still a Sukkah. No, I have a raya from the Gemara in Daf Lamed, Gazel Dumya de Piseach, Ma Piseach is disqualified, Gazel, it's not a Sukkah. And therefore the Shari Yosher asked on the Minchas Chinuch, that l'chayrat we're still up the creek without a paddle. Why do I need a pasuk of Chag HaSukkos Tasacha? Typically, that it's a mitzvah habah ba'avera.
Here's a theoretical question. Let's say there were 2 sukkahs in town. One was stolen and one was puzzled. What do? Option number 3, don't sit in a sukkah. Which would be the last that you do?
Well, according to Minchas Chinuch, you're better.
Right. See,
Okay.
According to Minchas Chinuch, still has Shem Sukkah. According to Reb Shimon, it loses the Shem Sukkah. It's a makom that's usher, except for the person who owns the sukkah.
Then you're out of luck.
Right.
Don't sit in a sukkah.
Okay, so now let me share with you. If you take the Minchas Chinuch that mitzvah habah ba'avera is only that the guy is not mekayim the mitzvah, but the sukkah is still kosher, we already pointed out that a nafkamina would be, what about somebody else sitting in the sukkah? Somebody else would be able to sit in the sukkah. I'm going to tell you...
Does it matter if he knows it was stolen when he sits in it?
No, even if he knows, it's not inherently disqualified. Let me just tell you another nafkamina. This is the nafkamina of Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim gives a very interesting nafkamina. For schach to be pasul, how much pasul for a sukkah to be pasul? How much pasul schach do you need? 4 amos, right? If it's 4 amos of pasul schach, it's not good. Sukkah is not good. So what if you have?
You have a huge sukkah of 20 amos.
Well, because then the wall is not good. Then the wall, then you lose that wall. Then you lose that wall.
Well, it wouldn't come.
No, because now it's above. Now it's more than the shiur of doifen akuma. If it's more than 4 amos, it's more, okay. What if you have 2 amos of pasul sukkah, of pasul schach, of metal, and 2 amos of stolen schach? Okay, 2 amos of pasul schach and 2 amos of stolen schach. What would you say?
Well, it depends. If this stolen schach loses the shame of the schach, then it's got to be puzzled. But if it still has, the theft is still considered schach, then it's totally in the machlokas that we just discussed.
So if you take like the Minchas Chinuch, that something stolen is a kosher sukkah, just you can't be mekayim the mitzvah with it. So I have 2 amos of pasul schach, and 2 amos of kosher schach, I just can't be mekayim the mitzvah with it. So I don't need to be mekayim the mitzvah with it. I have 50 amos of kosher schach to be mekayim the mitzvah. The sukkah is kosher. But now that the Torah says, Chag HaSukkah is ta'aselecha, that stolen schach is pasol schach, now the whole sukkah is pasol. That's an afkamina that Reb Chaim would say, why I need the pasuk of Chag HaSukkah is ta'aselecha. Because had it just been for Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera, the sukkah would be kosher. Because I only have 2 amos of pasol schach. Comes Chag HaSukkah is ta'aselecha, and it says the stolen schach is pasol schach. Okay, Mar Rabbi say, what? And therefore it's it's 4 amos of pasol schach, and the sukkah is pasol. Mar Rabbi say, we're going to try to answer the kasha of Reb Shimon Shkop. Okay, we'll do 2 more minutes, and we're going to try to answer the question. Again, Reb Shimon's kasha is, wait a second, Minchas Chinuch. You Minchas Chinuch say that Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera is a psul only on the Gavra, not on the Chefza. I brought you a raya from the Gemara on Daf Lamed that what? That Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera is an inherent disqualification, just like Piseach. Let's go back to that Tosfos that the Ritva quoted. Do you remember the Ritva quoted a Tosfos that, no, Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera doesn't apply by Sukkah, because the Sukkah is not coming l'ratzos. We only say Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera by lulav, which is balaratzos, by oila, which is balaratzos, but not by sukkah. That was the answer the Ritva quoted from Tosfos, and the Ritva rejected it. Why? Because the Yushalmi says that Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera applies even by matzah. And we learn it out from Eila HaMitzvahs. So that means that Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera applies by all mitzvahs. So therefore, that must be, the Ritva says Tosfos is wrong, Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera applies by all mitzvahs. Maybe comes a Ruch motion. We'll flesh this out more next time. So 1 second. Yes, you have a raya that Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera applies by all mitzvahs. For example, matzah. But maybe the Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera that applies by all mitzvahs is the Minchas Chinuch type of Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera, where the person just doesn't fulfill the mitzvah. The Gemara says, Gazol Dumio de Piseach, that if you steal a lulav, it's inherently, the chayfetz is not a chayfetz. The chayfetz is only pasul when it's balaratzos. But if it's not balaratzos, there's still Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera, but only on the gavra. Memela, when you're dealing with the mitzvah of sukkah, which is sukkah is not balaratzos, sukkah is like matzah, avada. There's Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera, like the Ritva says. Because we learn out from matzah, there's Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera by all mitzvahs. But what type of Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera is there by all mitzvahs? There's only a Mitzvah Habah Ba'avera that says the guy doesn't fulfill the mitzvah. But Reb Shimon says the chefza is possible, like by lulav. No, by lulav the chefza is possible because it's balaratzos. But if it's not balaratzos, then the chefza is kosher. It's just the guy. So I need the pasuk on the chefza. I'll spell this out clearer next time. Okay?
What did Reb Shimon say about the matzah then?
No, Reb Shimon. What?
What would Reb Shimon say about
Reb Shimon seemingly would say the chefza is possible by the matzah, but we would say you have no raya. We have no raya. Okay, we'll flesh this out more next time. Shkayach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.